Arpin, if Carey Price was here, I guess he would say, chill out.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. But yeah, probably. And Patrick Laine basically said chill out after the games. Yeah, he didn't use those words. That's
the vibe that got out of him. Yeah,
that's the vibe. Yeah. So Here we are. We're at the Bell Center. We're doing this on Thursday evening after the Canadiens lost. What was the score? 7-2?
7-2.
7-2 to the Maple Leafs B squad.
Is their worst loss in a preseason game since another 7-2 whooping against the Ottawa Senators on October 1st, 2021.
Wow.
I looked it up.
That's some real facts.
I looked it up. First star of the game, Alex Formenton.
Oh, awkward.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. All right. So this is Friday, September 26th, our episode for Friday, September 26th. We have reached the halfway point of the Canadiens preseason schedule. They have played 3 preseason games. We'll obviously talk about what happened on Thursday night at the Bell Center, but really want to focus on what we've seen so far through 3 games. But yeah, hard not to come away from how the Canadiens reacted to it. There's a serious disconnect between how the Canadiens looked at this game or prepared for this game or performed in this game to everything Martin St. Louis has said to this point about urgency and starting now and this and that. And, he said after the game, this is the first day of training camp where I'm really disappointed, and rightfully so. There was no engagement, but I would guard against reading too much into what happened, even though the Maple Leafs did not have their best lineup, not even close. But still, the coach was disappointed.
Yeah, well, rightfully so. I mean, he's been talking about stacking the days and make sure that, that they're urgent from day one, that they don't wait for October 8th to get started. But I mean, it's not because the team laid an egg and Nick Suzuki's line was not good that we have to be concerned about the fact that they're going to be good or not this season. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to worry. It's just that in a game like this, and especially against a squad like that, I feel as though guys were battling for spots. Yes, they can get extra points, but they're also in a position where they might lose points in the sense that if you can't showcase yourself properly against that sort of competition, well, what is it going to be when the level is raised and you're faced with a true NHL lineup, So because it was a particularly weak lineup from the Toronto Maple Leafs, and yet, nothing happened. The only young player that caught Martin St. Louis' eye was Philippe Michard.
Yeah, one of 2 players on his entire team that he thought had a positive impact on the game, or could look upon their game as positive, which doesn't bode well for basically the rest of them. So Philippe Michard and Mike Matheson being those 2 players. But again, it was telling that the message in the room clearly afterwards, because all the players just, were parrots and basically said it. The execution in the defensive zone was not there. Martin St. Louis said it himself. And this is an area of this training camp that's been a major point of emphasis for Marty, is that he wants to get not just defensive zone, but playing defensively. We've talked about it already, how Martin has repeatedly stated that we want to improve defensively, but that doesn't necessarily mean the defensive zone. They want to pressure the puck before it gets to the defensive zone. They want to prevent the puck from getting into the defensive zone. But against the Leafs on Thursday night, it was really a lack of execution in the defensive zone that most of the players were talking about and not happy with. Again, just anecdotally, I was talking to a pro scout during the game because that's how engaged I was in the game after a while. And I mentioned and now I have to write something about this, good luck. He's like, So do I. After I read a report, I'm like, well, what do you take out of a game like this? Like, nothing.
No.
I take nothing out of this. And so it's really, I think the Canadiens should take something out of it, but the rest of us should look at it with a little bit of perspective. And that's what we hope to do here is look at the first 3 games, look at the first, this first real week of training camp and what we've taken away from the halfway point of the preseason schedule. Obviously, there's a game tomorrow in Toronto. I would imagine you're going to see an A team from Toronto. They want to do that on home ice. It's kind of how exhibition works. Montreal's played 3 games on home ice, which is why they've gotten 3 wonky games where they're playing half their real NHL guys, and the teams they're playing against are not playing almost none of their NHL guys, or very few. So that's the caveat before we get into these takeaways of the first week, is that this first week is the weird week. Like,
It never tells you anything that's rock solid.
No.
Never.
No. The later you get into this exhibition schedule, the more telling those become. And that's obviously another big, I guess, theme of this training camp is, we talked about Marty on day 1 saying, I take responsibility for our poor start because we weren't able to get our reps because of all the shenanigans with the Senators last year over the last 2 games. And I hope to be able to get my NHL guys in those last 2 games. So those 2 games are now on the horizon. You got the game in Toronto, and then there's going to be 2 games left against the Ottawa Senators. So I think there's more to be learned in those games than the 3 games so far. But I think we have learned a lot of things over the 3 games so far. And it's worth, the one big one to me is the clearly kind of open battle for that spot. I'm going to say next to Alex Newhook and Zach Bodzik, but it could be between Alex Newhook and Zach Bodzik because Marty did not even commit to using Alex Newhook at center. And we have what's shaping up to be a 5 or 7 man race for that job. I mean, there's a lot of people, and all of those people had good moments, some less good moments, but if we list them, and then I'd like to hear who you think is in the lead here. But we got Beck, we got Kapanen, obviously Vincent's Rohrer, who we've talked about and who continues to, didn't really on Thursday night do a whole lot, but
he was not the worst player on the Canadian side.
But he was not the worst player on the Canadian side, exactly. And I think at one point I turned to you, I said, well, this is a wonky game, but all of his teammates are playing this wonky game, and he's one of the more noticeable guys among his teammates. But anyhow, Vince's Rohrer is there.
I know.
Joe Veleno, Samuel Blais, and Joshua Roy, and then there's Florian Xhekaj, who could potentially be on the outskirts of this race. And a lot of people in town are very excited, and that's why I think it's important to note, every year we see guys who shine in this first week who aren't able to shine in the second week. And I think he's probably earned himself an opportunity to do that in the second week. But I still think the plan for him is to go play in Laval.
Yeah.
And so, but I feel it would be not right. When Marty says every time he's on the ice, you notice him, then I think he has a right to at least be in the conversation as a guy who has a shot at that spot. So who do you like? Who enters the second half of the preseason in pole position in your eyes?
I would say it's Owen Beck. It's not necessarily the guy who I prefer, but if you ask me who's in quote unquote in the lead, I would say Owen Beck, because they know what he's about. They know the fact that there's a certain level of certainty in his game and maturity and responsibility. I think it was also the first guy that they've put next to Newhook and Bolduc, which is, it's not random that they made that choice.
Nothing's random.
No.
No.
So, and you need to have guys who I think that Veleno and Blais are still in fairly good spots because the younger guys need to really prove that they can pass the guys who are proven commodities that have been around, that when you ask them to do something, they'll be able to do it. They understand the realities of an NHL lineup and the ins and outs on a daily basis. So if you're not sure about any of your young guys, you can always go back to your more veteran types. But I still think that in that group, Owen Beck is somewhat in the lead.
Yeah.
I think that Kapanen had an interesting opportunity playing with Laine and Demidov. That was on Monday, and honestly, he didn't light the world on fire at all. Uh, I feel as though offensively, he's one of the more compelling guys, at least potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But so he has that to showcase, and he didn't really do that on that day. Um, well, we really like Vincent Rohrer, but he still seems to me like a bit of a dark horse. He'll need to be given another game and seize the full opportunity, which he did not completely do tonight. Well, on Thursday night.
Yeah. Well, Marty didn't mention him when you asked him, are there any positives for you
That's
among
right.
your players? He could have mentioned him and he didn't. So
yeah, so that gives me my answer.
right.
That's basically why I asked that question.
Yeah, exactly. And he was on a line with Meshar, so it's not as if he wasn't looking at that line. You know, I mean, he did.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
saw Meshar, he didn't see Rohrer. So
And as for Joshua Royce, he was given ample opportunities. Didn't really seize them. I think that I see the added foot speed because of
yeah,
the fact that he he got thinner, he's in better shape. But does it translate into him being more effective, more involved, more in the game itself? Not really. So I think that this race is still wide open,
yeah,
even though Beck to me is in the lead.
yeah. I would agree with that. I think the fact Beck wasn't in this game is somewhat you would imagine he's going to play Saturday. He was practicing. He practiced Thursday after the game group played. They had a practice after the game group skated rather Thursday morning. They had a practice, and Beck was. I didn't actually stay long enough to see if he was skating with them, but he was wearing the same color jersey as Newhook and Budzik. So I don't know what we're going to see on Saturday, but yeah, he's what's always been Beck's calling card is the fact that even his draft year, he had a projectable pro style game to him. Like that was his. The ceiling might not be super duper high, but I think it's pretty high for him. He's not. It wouldn't be fair to call him a high floor guy because that has a negative connotation where the ceiling's not high. But it kind of comes with the connotation that there's
I
not a
don't
high
think it's
ceiling.
negative.
I think a lot of guys look at it negatively now because if you're focusing on the floor as opposed to the ceiling, it naturally suggests that the ceiling is not particularly high, but you know that he'll play in the NHL. Whereas I think that applies to Beck.
It's not as negative as boom or bust because guys who are labeled boom or bust, they bust more often than they boom.
But I think high floor has become a draft term that people look at. Like you're not drafting upside, you're drafting
Security.
projectability, a safe pick, and so you want teams to take swings, but I mean the Red Wings have drafted tons of high floor guys over the last little while. And frankly, one of them, Marco Kasper last year, popped and had a great rookie season, and he was seen as one of those guys. But Branson Nygaard and like all Danielson, like all these guys were always looked at high floor guys with maybe somewhat limited ceilings. I think Beck is not quite at that level, but falls into that player profile somewhat. But I think he has a plus shot. His skating is good, NHL good. And the level of physicality he's shown that he's been able to bring so far in camp adds a dimension to him that Hua doesn't offer, Kapanen doesn't offer. Obviously, Xhekaj does, but among the primary candidates here, that sets Beck apart. I think that's what helps Rohrer as well is the physicality part of his game. But Beck has a year of North American pro hockey under his belt, which naturally would, to ask Rohrer to make the jump from the Swiss NL to the NHL is almost an unreasonable ask. I think he's putting his best foot forward, and he's showing that he should be on the Canadiens' radar. And I think a lot of people in the organization have taken notice of what he's done.
Yeah.
But to ask him to do that would be as big of a jump as they asked Kapanen to do last year, coming from the Finnish league to the NHL, and it proved to be too big of a jump. But then he went back to Sweden and had an excellent season in Sweden. So if they do that with Rohrer, maybe he can use that to kind of get to another level.
Well, in terms
eventually.
of development, last year was phenomenal for Kapanen
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the fact that he earned a spot to begin the season, he ended up going back to a league where he was comfortable, where he knew his marks, dominated with Timra, came back, and they lived the experience of, I mean, 2 sets of playoffs. So that was great. In terms of development, that was, you could not have asked for a better outcome for Kapanen.
Yeah.
So I think that if Rohrer is good enough to say, you know what, we can buy a bit of time by giving you a shot the first few games, and because we know that Veleno and Blais will go through waivers and won't be playing, or because it doesn't matter if Kapanen and Beck are sent down for 2-3 weeks, big deal. But that's an individual path. If we're talking about the team, maybe that they won't think of Rohrer's path development because before they think of how the team is going to look on the first day. So that's why, even though he might shine, Beck is still in the mix.
Yeah, and I think the circle. We obviously mentioned that. Well, I mentioned. I don't know if we mentioned it in the last episode, but obviously what they did with Kapanen is, shows that they're willing to do something like that. That they're willing to keep a guy because he doesn't have the option of going to Laval. I mean, there is a European assignment clause, and so in that case, they kept Kapanen because of that. Would they keep Rohrer because of that as well? Maybe, but you do have to remember that the circumstances are different. The expectations are different going into the season. There's no in the mix slogan going on. There's the bar is the playoffs. This team wants to make the playoffs. They want a strong start in October. And so it's not a context in which you do development projects because of a European assignment clause. If Rohrer earns a spot on the team legitimately, and they would have kept him even if he could go to Laval, then you keep him. If not, under these circumstances, I don't think it's as justifiable this year as it was last year in Kapanen's case, probably, to do that, for development purposes. So it's, but having said that, there's nothing saying Rohrer can't win the job outright. He could.
He could.
Of those, of the guys we've talked about, I think he's only behind Beck, really. I would put him only behind Beck in terms of how he's performed in training camp. He has the benefit of having the rookie tournament as a sample size, and he popped in the rookie tournament in my eyes. So but yeah, Beck's probably the front runner. Let's see what happens Saturday and who plays and where they play. But I like Beck's chances at the halfway point.
The right shot next to Newhook, that's interesting. The fact that he can go in there or win some faceoffs, I think that's an added layer to it. But we're talking as though it's going to be a guy playing with Bolduc and Newhook. But I wonder also, and I don't want to lead the discussion there just yet, but I mean, those two guys could legitimately at some point end up with Demidov.
Yes. They could, or there could be some sort of
elevated,
mix.
Or Bolduc could be.
Well, let's get back to that. We're gonna get back to that because we want to talk about Kirby Dach because he played his first preseason game on Thursday.
Okay, other takeaways from the first.
Well, just to kind of loop that, I think we should talk. There's a lot of excitement around Florian Xhekaj. Obviously, the other night gets into a fight with Delorier, scores a goal. His brother scores a goal. His mom's in the building. She's crying. It's a great story.
Great.
And so I think in Florian Xhekaj's case, we set off the top. The organization probably wants to send him back to Laval and get him to some more development time there and build on the momentum that he built last year and really surprise Pascal Vincent with how well he did last year. And you remember you and I had a conversation with Pascal very early last season. And we were talking about the various guys that could play a certain kind of role. And Tuck had just gone into his first fight. And he's like, you need guys like this. And then and then he started listing the guys. It was like Tuck, I guess Davidson was another one. And I forget who we mentioned, but then I said, and Xhekaj. And he's like, Xhekaj, well, he's young. It's going to take him some time. He's young. So he wasn't knocking him or anything, but he didn't know a whole lot about him. He was a rookie, and it just showed where the expectations were. Florian Xhekaj blew those expectations out of the water, and by the end of the season, he was one of Pascal's most trusted players. He was on the penalty kill. He got all those goals without getting a sniff of power play time. Like, everything's positive, but I think the fervor in the city around this guy potentially getting a spot on the team, I think it potentially could be a detriment to the momentum that he built in Laval, and let's see how he does. He's earned the right to play in kind of the more serious part of the preseason schedule. And let's see, maybe he'll prove that he can play in that environment. But I think they would like to see him get a bigger role in Laval this year and just create, you talk about Marty's always saying stack the days. Well, this would be a case of stacking the seasons, right? Like, Florian's floor was down, let's say, at the beginning of last season. They raised it really, really high over the course of the year. Now he starts there. Where can he get it to in his second AHL season and be a viable call-up option over the course of the season if he proves it, Yeah. So it's not negative. It's not knocking him. It's just that you just got to keep the plan in perspective sometimes and just realize that, what happens in these games aren't always, actually rarely are, an indication of what would happen in a regular season game.
Well, when you
especially
talk about
the first week. Yeah.
When you talk about the fans wanting Florian Xhekaj, to me, I know that fans are a lot for entertainment value. That's why they love Lane Hudson so much. That's why they're so eager to see Ivan Demidov in action. That's why they like Cole Caulfield so much, because these players provide a lot of entertainment value, just like PK before and Alex Kovalev before. You get my drift. But there's another side of entertainment, which is not based on skills, but based on the old-timey intimidation, rough and tough, not necessarily Hanson brothers, but something echoey of Slapshot's Hanson brothers, and the possibility
it's his brothers on the team.
The possibility of having the sheriff and the deputy is very, for lack of a better term, very romantic. It's very enticing because it would bring a color and a level of personality to the Canadiens roster that A, we don't have, and B, that is so atypical throughout the league. So
especially since they're such atypical
players themselves.
Not only that, but like backgrounds and the way they reach the NHL, they come from a working class family. Everything about them is appealing. The whole story, everything about the story is very, very Hollywood-like appealing. Yeah.
So you want the next chapter to start as soon as possible. And that's where I think that there needs to be a little bit of calm down, everybody, because he's going to get there. Florian Xhekaj is going to play for the Canadiens. I have zero doubt about it. Yeah. He's good enough for that. But it doesn't have to be now. Yeah. It's Marty the other day said the only thing with Florian is that, it's the defensive reads, but, just like any young player, if you are to get a job in the NHL on the fourth line, the one thing that you need to be trusted with is your defensive reads.
Well, you can't get scored on.
That's it.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like he sort of tipped his hand at that point, but that's okay. To me, he's probably down the road 4 or 5 years from now, he might be a more impactful player than any of those that we listed.
Yeah, possibly.
But it doesn't have to be now.
It's just that you look at him and you think like, man, that guy would be useful in the playoffs. But the version of him right now, or even the version of him at the end of the season, because if you were to make the team, obviously he would improve over the course of the season. There would be development going on. But that's the type of player you want to have in the playoffs. It's just that you don't want to skip steps, and he's already beat the odds to get to where just like his brother has. They've both beaten the odds. And I, like you, agree. I have no doubt that these two guys will play for the Canadiens at the same time at some point. but you don't want to skip steps. And who's to say putting Beck on the team is not, he has the same amount of professional North American experience as Xhekaj. So it's like, it's
Yeah.
not as if Beck has all this other baggage, but he does, because he's been on the NHL radar for longer, even though, he's been a top player. He's been on Hockey Canada's radar for longer. Like everything, his preparation for this moment has been going on for longer. Well, I shouldn't say that. His preparation for this moment has been, I guess, more spotlighted or whatever. It's been, I think Xhekaj has the defense, the pro habits that Beck has is something that I think Xhekaj still needs to work on. And because Beck has always had those pro habits, like it's always been a part of his game. Xhekaj's still learning them. Hell, his brother's still learning them. I mean, it's really getting better in his case, but it's been a process for him to learn them at the NHL level. And so
taming the inner violence and learn to be disciplined and pick your spots. It's been a constant struggle for Arbor. Even the other day, you showed a bit of a lack of discipline. Maybe he wanted this fight too.
A lot of people over. He did want. I think that's why.
Yeah.
When he came out after the game, it was like, well, he stole the show tonight. Like he was proud, but he was kind of like, I would have liked to have had a fight too. I mean,
that's it.
So I think he saw that as his opportunity.
And against the Leafs, Florian lacked discipline. He was, he went, he crossed.
One of those was kind of garbage, though. One of those was a garbage penalty. I mean,
for sure. He
got that because he was Florian.
Yeah.
And they saw what he did the other night. I think that was Eric Furlat that called it on him too. Like a veteran. I don't know if it was him or the other ref, but anyhow, it was an unmerited penalty. I actually think it was the other guy. Yeah. It was not merited. He just came into a scrum late and he just grabbed a guy, and all of a sudden he's like, "You're gone." So, but still, it's, I think there's nothing wrong with sending Florian Xhekaj back to Laval.
But I want one guy to run away with it, and that's not now that's happening. It's from now on. There needs to be someone who steps up and makes that job his. That I just hope that this won't be given by default to someone.
This is great segue. You inadvertently have a great segue to talk about Kirby Dach. So Kirby Dach, which you could argue is getting this job by default, having the spot between Patrick Laine and Ivan Demidov. He plays his first preseason game, obviously, on Thursday. It's a shame that the entire team put up a total stinker when Kirby Dach was trying to get his game reps in. Sorry, the guys are.
Is it one of those days? Okay.
I think they're replacing the plexiglass. No, I don't think they're putting the concert floors on. Anyhow, whatever. Excuse the noise. Kirby Dach, he just wanted to get his game reps. Marty said they were really happy that he was allowed to play this game. They are basically following the directions of their medical staff. And it was, Marty seemed almost quasi surprised that he was playing so early, it seemed, this morning at least. And so it was unfortunate that the team just didn't show up, because these game reps are good, because there's a certain urgency here to get this line going, right? Like the word urgency has been the theme of camp, is like, we were all looking for a slogan coming out of the golf tournament. The slogan's urgency.
Yeah.
And Marty's been from day one that this starts right now. And the fact that so many guys were here in August and September, earlier in September, suggested that they could get going with a running start in camp. Dach and Laine both, to a certain extent, after the way last season started for both of them. Obviously, Laine was injured, and Dach got off to a very slow start. And so I found it interesting. So this morning I asked Marty, because last year you heard Jeff Gorton say it, you heard Kent Hughes say it, you heard Marty say it, you even heard Kirby Dach himself say it, that I know it's going to take time. I know I'm going to need some time to get back up to speed because of this injury, which was obviously major. Reconstructive knee surgery is not easy to come back from. But there was all these sort of, caveats or like sort of almost built-in excuses that if Kirby Dach doesn't get off to a great start, it's okay. We're willing to be patient. You don't get that vibe this year.
Well, no, because it's not a we're going to give ourselves a fighting chance and we're going to be in the mix.
That's it.
The expectations is we're going to be in the playoffs and we're going to be an improved team. But in order for that to happen, you have to have that second line going and thriving from game one, because otherwise it puts too much pressure on the Suzuki line. And you have also Ivan Demidov there, who's like the crown jewel of your organization, at least offensively. And you want to make sure that his first season in the NHL is going to go in the right direction. And it may be that in retrospect, we'll look at this and say it was a bold move to put that kid with those two guys, because he's right now he's a little bit exposed, right? This is a line that needs to provide the sort of offense that will share the load with the Suzuki line, but it's also that defensively, if you just look at last year with all those guys being in the minus, they can really hurt you defensively. So that's
Kirby
why
Dach was on pace to have the worst plus minus in Canadiens history.
Yeah. So that's why he's been saying how his focus is to play away from the puck, be responsible defensively. So there is an urgency for that line to find chemistry, to find consistency, to find a pace also. And I don't know who carries the more pressure or the more responsibility, but I mean, you can't put it on Demidov. He's a rookie. He's just arriving. The other guy has not played since February. You have to look to Patrick Laine and say, can you say that you're going to be the best version of yourself? Well, if he's not, and if you're going to make that face, then
I mean, if you're looking at Patrick Laine to be the defensive conscious of anything.
No.
Right.
To help that line get going, not the defensive responsibility, because there's no Selke candidate on that line.
But the reality is Patrick Laine is not a line driver. He's a finisher. And so like it's hard to look to him to drive a line, and that's why when Jeff Gorton was asked about the whole Demidov, is it too young for him to drive a line? Yeah, we think he can. We haven't really seen it at 5-on-5 so far with those two guys and with Demidov. I'm of the mind, I know that a lot of people are very skeptical of Kirby Dach, but when Kirby Dach is at his best, he can drive a line. He can establish possession in the offensive zone with a good entry up the middle of the ice between the two blue lines when he's at his best. But it's just been so long since we've seen him at his best. I think people tend to forget that. And maybe that version of Kirby Dach is gone, and there's a different version of Kirby Dach that's going to have to learn how to be effective with the new parameters that he's working under after 2 straight surgeries on the same knee, which would be understandable. But the point is that the Canadiens need to find that out fast, and Kirby Dach needs to figure that out fast. And the first opportunity they had to do that, the whole team just played a stinker and really did not put him in a position to benefit from his first preseason game. Like, I think it was telling that Marty said that he thought Kirby had his legs, that he had energy like that. That's a good thing. That's a good sign. And I wouldn't disagree with him. I thought he did have his legs and he looked like he was skating okay. And there was one instance where, who was it? Cade Weber. Cade Weber took a bit of a run at Ivan Demidov. He caught him sort of askew a little bit.
Yeah.
And Dach took exception to that and spent the rest of the shift trying to get Cade Weber to fight. And I was like, man, you don't start a fight. First came back after its second straight surgery on the knee. But in the grand scheme of things, that's commendable. Kirby Dach understands how important Ivan Demidov is. He didn't like the hit. And for some reason, Cade Weber didn't want to fight him. But Dach tried everything he could. Like, they were battling in front.
Yeah.
And the play was going back up ice. And Dach was still yapping at Cade Weber. And so that, that's a game rep. That's something that he reacted to a situation. And that's, I thought that was a positive sign for him. So
He doesn't shy away from that sort of stuff, and the more that he does it, historically, the more he does it, the better he is.
Well, he had a great interview with our colleague Eric Engels the day that he spoke to us, and he mentioned, and this is, we've talked about it, and he said it himself. When I have that FU in my game, I'm most effective. And you look back to the second half of that first season in Montreal, that's what he had. He was hitting guys. He was very physical. He fought a couple of times, but it was really him being mean on the ice that made him most effective. So that was a positive sign. But yeah, they were on the ice for a bunch of goals against. Sam Montembeault didn't have his best night. I think he was to blame for maybe 2 of the 3 goals they were on the ice for. But still, the defensive details are not there, and it's going to be very interesting to see, because I think overreacting from this game would be foolish. But as we go into the second half of the preseason schedule, I don't know how many games Dach's going to get. Probably not too many. I would be surprised if he played on Saturday. He'd maybe get one of the last 2 or both. I don't know.
I would say both.
Sure, maybe. But again, they're being driven by the medical team. This is not going to be a hockey decision solely. This is going to be a medical decision as well. At what point are the Canadiens justified in getting impatient if it takes Dach and Laine a little bit of time to get going, to find some chemistry, to be effective at 5-on-5? And what are their alternatives if that doesn't happen? There's not that many.
No, there's not that many. There's an alternative for the Dach line, which would be to elevate Bolduc and have Bolduc, Dach, and Demidov.
Yeah.
I think that it would increase the pace. It would increase the level of defensive responsibility. So that could help that line.
So let me pretend to be Alex Newhook if that happens.
Well, there you go.
Every time I think I'm out, they keep pulling me back in.
Yes.
Well, he's offline his line. He's like, okay, I'm free. And then all of a sudden.
Well, and especially in the context where, Martin Saint-Louis is looking to give Alex Newhook defensive responsibilities. Well, good luck if you inherit Patrick Laine on your line and try to do that. So
listen, he has his limitations. Everyone knows them. But, I think him, and honestly, you might laugh, but there were a couple of instances in that game against the Leafs where he didn't have the puck and he skated hard to try and get it back. And I know that's a low bar, and it seems ridiculous to say that about an NHL player, but frankly, I don't think there was one instance last year where I could have said that about Patrick Laine, where he didn't have the puck. He was tracking it in the neutral zone and decided to really skate at his top speed to try and get it back. I saw that on a handful of occasions, and as ridiculous as that might sound, that's a step in the right direction for Patrick Laine.
Yeah, well, the reason why I react like this, because I saw on Thursday night against the Leafs many instances where not moving his feet or just being too slow with the puck on his stick made it him losing the puck. He got the puck stolen.
He has that maddening habit of taking. He can't take passes on his backhand, so he takes it on the toe of his stick. When he first got here, I found it fascinating. I was like, wow, that's a pretty cool little skill, but he loses that. He doesn't receive that pass 8 times out of 10. So it's not that cool when that happens. So.
No. So anyway, I think that, there is an urgency on Dach to be back in shape, but you cannot, you can't pull on the flower to make it grow faster. It's going to happen in due time, but it's just it's the life expectancy of that line that I'm really wondering. And you use the term wonky to describe those games in the first half of preseason.
Mm-hmm.
I would use the term wonky to describe that line in itself, and the chemistry that's just, it's not, it doesn't fit. And I'm not sure if time is going to help with the chemistry that's needed to make that line a reliable line in all circumstances, on the road, at home, 5-on-5, late in periods. If you have to shelter this line too much, 5-on-5, it's going to be a problem for the Canadiens.
Do you know what I think? Actually, when we said there's not that many alternatives, I think the nuclear option would be that if that line doesn't work, and they see Demidov kind of drowning as a result.
Yeah.
Maybe they swap Slav and Newhook, and they put Demidov up with Suzuki and Caulfield at that point, and see if Slav and Dach can rekindle some of that chemistry they had many, many moons ago, when they seemed to look like the two best forwards in training camp, and then Dach got injured on the fourth period of the year or whatever it was. So that year, the first Dach injury, they went into the season playing together, and they came out of a camp where Dach looked like the best player in camp, and Slav was his running mate. And so the lack of alternatives, if that line doesn't work, could lead to the one thing that I think Marty doesn't want to do, which is break up those three guys, but he might be left with no choice because there is no real good alternative.
Well, Alex Newhook would say, you know what, I could be the center on that second line. Just give me a chance to do it.
Yeah.
And or it could be, or even as a winger, if you've got, if you've got a guy like Owen Beck or Kapanen who prove that they can center the fourth line, you may have different options, and you could allow yourself to put Newhook back on the wing in a top six position. That's not ideal. I'm sure that they have otherwise.
That's what they would do. Third line then. Dach, I guess, right? Dach would move down.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, then you would have, and you take your time with him, I guess. I don't know. It's just, I like your idea with Slavkovsky. It doesn't feel as though Marty is has any intention of breaking his top line.
He has none. He literally said, obviously, they're going to start the year together.
Yeah.
He said it.
But I thought of that during the game against Toronto in regards to the power play. I was thinking if Slavkovsky was actually playing on the Demidov unit, and if he was the net front presence, it could potentially be interesting, But as opposed to being a lot on the right circle, where I feel like I prefer Suzuki firmly placed on the right circle and be more of a puck distributor.
Well, that's it. Demidov is most comfortable in that spot as well. So
that's it.
This is a case of, you have Caulfield and Laine who prefer playing in the left circle. You have Suzuki and Demidov who prefer playing in the right circle. Like, there's no reason to.
No, but if you're going to, so I guess Slavkovsky's best spot would be net front. I think that's where.
But that's where he's playing right now.
Well, he's used a lot on the right circle. We saw it, in the.
Well, that unit moves around a lot, but when they set up, the first setup is Suzuki in that right circle and Slav at goal line / net front.
Mm-hmm.
That's their initial setup, but that's the move around unit.
Yeah,
and the other unit is more static and kind of like let Demidov create. And frankly, Christ, I mean, he did that against Toronto. Like, I mean, they had some power. The no-look pass to Laine, which was ridiculous, but there were other instances where he was just operating in space and a little shoulder fake could create some space. And like, so that unit's not humming right now, but like Demidov is clearly the quarterback of that unit. We saw it again against the Leafs. I think he's going to be very patient with those power play units, because I think theoretically the two units are very well constructed. They've really put proper thought into it, and they're among I think it's the best use of the talent that they have. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So, but I think they'll get more runway. Power play units will than
the 5-on-5,
than the Dach line, Demidov line at 5-on-5.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, look, we started by saying that mentioning the caveat that those first few games didn't mean much, if anything at all. Well, let's not get carried away with the first game of Kirby Dach since February 22nd. I mean, he'll get a pass, from me any day of the week, just based on that.
Especially, it's like he was far from the worst player on his team, like not even close. Yeah. So, I mean, really, it's a positive. It's a positive they got to play. It's a positive that he looked decent. He skated much better against Toronto than he did in camp last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like in camp last year, he was visibly slow, and we've seen him skate in practice. He was not visibly slow there, and at least in the game.
No, actually, Mike Matheson, I spoke to him on Thursday morning, and he said that he thought that generally since the beginning of camp, he looks very fast. And he
Yeah.
said after the 2 years that he has gone through, he said he has surpassed my expectations, the expectations that I had for a guy coming back from the 2 years that he's gone through.
Yeah.
So he's like,
I mean, it's extremely hard to do what he's done, and the way he attacked the offseason, you know, and he deserves a lot of credit. He's had a real change of perspective, and maybe he, you know, maybe he should be blamed for the sort of the lack of urgency or the lack of seriousness he had last summer. But he definitely changed that. He learned from it, and so let's see if it bears fruit. So as the crew at the Bell Center starts putting the floor down for whatever's happening here tomorrow night, or Friday night, let's just shift our focus to the kind of the more real part of training camp and what we expect to see and what the Canadiens should hope to see over those final 3 games starting Saturday night in Toronto against what should be a far closer lineup to what the actual Maple Leafs are going to look like this year.
Yeah. So when it comes to the battles, you know, for those last couple of spots, because you had the Suzuki line playing on Thursday and the Dach line, you know, you'll see obviously the Newhook line, but you'll see a bunch of those guys who are fighting for a spot, and they're going to face top competition. So
I wonder if they're going to bring both. I wonder if they're going to bring both NHL lines. We're only going to find that out, I guess, Saturday morning. But I'd be curious to see if they're going to bring both the Newhook line and the Evans line to Toronto.
Well, I think they will.
I would think they would, but
I think they will. It's just that it's not, to me, it's the other 2 lines where it might not be just at this point, just a rotation of whose turn is it now?
Yeah, that's it. Now it's who do we want to see?
That's it.
I thought it was interesting. Marty said on Thursday morning how Jeff Gordon and Ken Hughes are like heavily involved in creating the lineups.
Yeah.
And he was totally fine with it. Like he was totally cool with it. If that happened in the regular season, he would be apoplectic and he would lose his mind.
Yeah, for sure. But at this point, it's like we need to see these guys. You know, there's basically they're the deciders. They're the ones who are making the decisions on who makes the cut and who doesn't. So basically, of course, they're going to be involved in their say of who.
Well, the first tell of that was when you asked him that question about Rohrer, like the fact that he has to go back to Europe, and he said that's a question for Ken. So that was the first tell that, yes, the coach can have his wants, but I think on the fringes of the roster, he leaves that to management. Yeah, I think it would be fair. You know, we just talked about how don't overinterpret what we saw in the first week. I think there's a lot of overinterpretation that's going to be fair in the lineup Saturday. Like it's going to be fair overinterpretation of where the Canadiens are leaning in certain respects. Now, it doesn't just if let's say Owen Beck is playing with Newhook and Bodzik, I don't think that's a given that that's his job.
No.
But who else is playing in that game? I agree with you. The 2 other lines, you know, I think the defense is pretty much set at this point.
Well, not really, because you've got Dobson and Gooley who are actually, and Reinbacher, three guys who are out with injuries. Maybe it's day-to-day stuff.
Training camp groin injuries. I mean, these happen every year, and Marty couldn't have looked less concerned after the game. So
I know, but I'm not sure if they're going to play on Saturday.
No, I know, but I'm just saying in their case, the defense is there's not that many questions of how they're opening. If assuming everyone gets through camp healthy, I think we know the 6 defensemen who are going to be in the lineup on October 8th in Toronto.
Yeah.
But the forwards, you know, I think I would like to see. I'd like to see Josh Roy. Like, I'd like to see more. I really want. He really seems to want it. Like the summer he put in, you know, he wants to prove that there's more to him, and he just seems like he's just like a little bit away from what the best version of him could be at all times. And no one expects him to be a super...
Why do you think that is?
I don't... Why do I think...
Why do you think that
why do I
just
say that
off the
about...
mark?
Why do I just find him hesitant. He's always... When he gets to the NHL, he's always a little bit hesitant. And when there's a puck battle, he'll go in there, but he won't be first in there. He'll come in second, and he'll invariably, more often than not, he will lose that puck battle. And so it's like it's that split second of hesitancy that he has in Montreal that he doesn't have as much in Laval. He needs to get that out of his game and give himself the space to show off the skill, because the skill is obvious. Like, he's got great skill. There's just like a little, and no one wants him to be like this heavy physical guy, but you just need a little compete, that this little bit more compete to him that he needs to show off that skill. I'd like to see that.
But I haven't seen enough of a separation from his skill level, him showing his skill level compared to the other ones. And the reason why we like Rohrer is because the spark that he brings on a lot of his shifts, you see where the intensity meshes with the skill level, and it creates something on the ice, rather than we hope that circumstances will enable Josh to showcase his skill. He doesn't provoke it.
Well, the thing is, like, Rohrer is clearly not as skilled as Roy, but you see more of Rohrer's skill because he does the things necessary to be able to show off his skill. So it's, in a game context, he almost is more skilled than Roy because he gets to show it more because he does the things that allows him to show it. But, like, if you look at the two players, it would be ridiculous to say that Vincent Rohrer is more skilled than Joshua Roy. He's not, but he does the things that allow you to show skill. So I'd like Joshua Roy to start doing the things that would allow us to see his skill on a more consistent basis. I mean, he gets on the power play. He's playing like the Bolduc role on the bumper with the top guys, and he was like beaming about it after the game. But and there were a few instances actually on those power plays where he did keep pucks alive and he did maintain a little bit of possession, but not enough of it. So I think if he's going to get another opportunity. He's going to get to play at least one more preseason game, if not two, if not three. Who knows?
There's always one guy every year that gets a lot more games than everybody else.
That's it. So he might be that guy. So he needs to, recognize that this is a different phase of the schedule, that they're going to place more NHL heavy lineups here, and he's really got to show what he can offer this team. Because, to be honest, the role that's available doesn't suit Joshua Roy that well. If they had a different role available, I think you'd have a better chance of making this team. But the role that's open right now, he's got a mountain to climb, and he's got guys to leapfrog to get that role, because the guys ahead of him or the guys he's competing with might be better suited to play that.
I would say we briefly mentioned Philippe Michard. I must say that I'm happy for the kid that after being written off, is able to come back closer to a decent prospect. We see his speed. He's involved. He's you can tell that he's happy with the way things are going for him. He makes no illusion about the fact that he's going to go back to Laval, but at least he's grasping what he needs to do. He looks and feels healthy.
He understands what it means to play professional hockey in North America.
Yeah. And I don't know if he's ever going to play in the NHL. It might just take a long time. Who knows? And it might not be with Montreal, but at least you feel as though he's furthering his career right now.
And I think he had a similar realization as well. The summer that Roy put in made it clear that he understood that this is a critical year for his career, and he did the work.
Yeah.
And Michard, I think, also has realized that this is a critical year for his career. And I don't know the work. I'm sure he put in a lot of work, but in his case, it was just a mindset change where he's like, I have to add more grit to my game. I have to show my physicality. I have to go to the dirty areas. And he did that tonight. There were a couple of times he made really good cuts to the net on the power play, even at 5-on-5. He was around the net a lot. And he understands that's where he needs to live. I think I'm eager to see what he does in Laval this year, and but his head's in the right place. And he knows what he needs to do to show off his skill. And Pascal I think it's an incredible compliment when a coach points out that you can flash your skill at top speed, because there's very, very few players who can make plays with the puck while skating at top speed. Almost everyone slows down a tiny bit when they want to make a play with the puck. And that's the one thing that when Pascal Vincent talks about Méchard's dimension or what he's good at, that is a great compliment, that you're able to make plays at top speed. There's a small percentage of players who are able to do that, and most of those players wind up being the elite players in the NHL, because that's a skill. That's a rare skill. Phil Kessel was really good at it. Ilya Kovalchuk was fantastic at it. Like, that guy could shoot at top speed without slowing down, in stride. And that's what caught goalies off guard so often, is because they anticipate that tiny little slowdown to gather the puck and rip it. Anyhow, Philip Méchard's not going to be Ilya Kovalchuk, but it's going to be interesting to see if that sort of the grittiness he wants to add will allow him to display that skill a little bit more often. Say, for instance, win a puck battle in the defensive zone, get the puck back for your team, get up ice, and then be able to show that skill in the offensive zone.
Speaking of grit, I like Jared Davidson personally, but the issue will probably remain the same with him, his feet.
Yeah.
The fact he doesn't have NHL speed, and that's probably what's going to be the biggest deterrent to him earning a spot at any
Thorpe
point
too.
in the NHL.
Thorpe's got to work on that as well. He's worked on it all summer, but
yeah.
Well, he has like I forget her name, but he worked all summer with a pretty famous skating coach in Vancouver. She works with a lot of NHL players. Her name escapes me. Sorry, I wrote it earlier in the summer, but he knows his feet need to improve.
Yeah,
he's working on it, and if he ever figures that out, I think they might have a player there, because he's an interesting player.
Davidson's further in his development than Thorpe. Thorpe has got a lot of runway still,
Well, yeah, they're similarly went undrafted. They were draft +1 guys, both of them. Like Xhekaj too. Like Floyd. I mean, the Canadiens have made this a habit, and frankly, all of them look like good bets. Like, I don't know if Davidson's going to play in the NHL, but I think he's, for a 5th round pick, his second draft year eligible. I would do that.
There's a lot of.
Is he a 5th round pick?
Yeah.
So yeah,
there's a lot. There's
him,
a lot to
Thorpe,
like.
Xhekaj, yeah.
There's a lot to like in Davidson's games. That's why I brought him up. He needs to improve his skating, but if he does, there's a combination of feistiness and a bit of a scoring ability there that's still somewhat untapped. But I think a lot of those guys, though, they're not your upper tier prospects anymore. You see that the pipeline of the Canadiens,
the upper tier prospects are on the team.
That's it.
They play in Montreal right now.
At this point, it's more like who's going to be a role player. Those who have like more size, obviously, will always have a bit of an edge. So that's where Florian Xhekaj eventually, I think, is going to get an invitation. But it's among those other guys, who can really stand out, because it's going to be a dogfight, not just until the end of camp, but for foreseeable future. You look at, that's what's going to make the Laval Rockets so interesting, because who could be a call up on any given day?
Yeah,
there will be a lot to choose from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the big things I'm going to look for in the coming week, and obviously we're going to talk to you guys on Monday again, but Marty dropping that line about, I don't even know if Newhook's going to play center.
Yeah, that's intriguing.
He didn't have to say that.
No,
he just said that, just like that. So
because Newhook thinks that he's starting the season in center. He says, at least, one thing that's for sure is I'm gonna, at least it's good to know that I'm gonna play center.
Yeah, but if you're trading that third line center role for a top 6 winger role, I think you would take it, right?
Sure.
I mean, like this. So, and if that happens, like, whose winger job would he be taking, or is he? I don't know what's gonna happen there. I mean, there's a lot. Like, it's great to talk about, I lost my role in the power play, or I'm playing on the third line, and I've lost my top 6.
Yeah.
Well, go out and show that you should get it back. I haven't been wowed by Alex. I mean, it's not that he's been bad, but he doesn't seem like a guy who's fighting to keep the role that he thinks should be his. And I wouldn't blame Alex Newhook if he looked at this and he was like, why does Kirby Dach get to get penciled in. No questions asked. Marty, first day, he's going to be our 2C. What's up? Why can't I fight for that job? We mentioned it on the podcast, Well, show out. And as I said, you can fight for it.
Yeah.
Go show it. So I'd like to see him show a little bit more. And I'd like,
but
and if he showed more.
Yeah, but put yourself in his shoes.
I am putting myself in his shoes.
Yeah, but if he's asked to fill a certain role, he'll focus on learning that role and making sure that he can fill that role the best way that he can.
Right, but I haven't seen. Have you seen him have you noticed him once defensively all week?
Well,
I haven't.
It's still early in camp.
It's still early in camp. Well, that's it. Well, then show that. Show that in the coming week.
I have not seen him being like caved in his zone. It's not that it's, oh my God, prowess. That's okay. If he comes out even out of this, that's fine.
I'd like to notice him more on either side of the puck. I mean, honestly, like it'd be noticeable.
Yeah.
And make decisions hard, like as we said, like, the fact that we're sitting here like, oh, if Dach doesn't work out, what do they do? Well, give that alternative, like show that you're wrong to say that I need to be more defensive. You're wrong to take me off the power. Show it. I am trying to put myself in his shoes. Yeah. I think that's what you would want from an NHL player is be like, I'm gonna show you that I deserve the spot that I think I deserve. But you can't just say you deserve it. You got to go out and prove it. So if you're being asked to shore up the defensive stuff, and Marty's been talking about this with Newhook since last season, middle of last season, he needs to use the same pace and the same speed he shows offensively. He needs to do it defensively.
Yeah.
He's been talking about it for a long time with him, and he's not getting it consistently from him, but that's what he needs him to do. And it's funny, we were talking to Josh Anderson the other night after one of the games, and I was like, I'm wondering, like, Marty had a conversation with you going into training camp last year. You're going to be on the PK, you're going to be more defensive, and you seem to embrace that. And I don't know if he's had that conversation with Newhook, but do you think you might talk to Newhook and be like, hey, you might not love what's happening, but if you just embrace the role that you're being given, like look at my season last year. It was great. Right. Like I had a great season. It can be like that for you. And he's like, no, I don't think I'll let someone figure it out. And by the time the end of this, like, yeah, maybe I will talk to him. It's kind of like, maybe I will. And so, let's see. Like, these are the things that need to play out. The middle six remains no clearer than it did going into camp.
No.
And so that's what needs to be figured out.
No, and by middle six, it's because you hint that Jake Evans is the fourth line, right?
Right. I shouldn't do that.
No,
it's So right now
the
Newhook and Dach lines remain in flux.
Yeah.
Just as they were before camp, and I don't think there's that much more clarity to either of them. And the reality is that October 8th is coming. It's going to come fast. And like Marty, I think after the game Thursday, was like, yeah, it's going to come fast. And it's like, so they need to figure some stuff out. And they're going to have, they're going to play in Toronto, and then they're going to have that game in Quebec City, and then they're going to stay in Quebec City for 3 days for the little retreat thing. Well, I would suggest maybe a little less golf and like a bit more video or meetings or whatever you're going to do. But that's an opportunity to really figure some stuff out. And so that's what's coming. I think what's happened so far has given a good amount of information, but I think a lot of questions remain heading into the final 3 preseason games.
Yeah, I think that, and they know that they're a couple of pieces away. There's pieces that are not on this team right now. They need another center, and I would say also that they need a reliable 200-foot winger that could play in that middle six. It's funny, but at this point, it made perfect sense when they traded away Arturi Lehkonen, but the Canadiens could use an Arturi Lehkonen today.
Yeah, but I mean,
or a guy that's not like a high profile or talent,
like Emil Heineman.
The idea that you make of Emil Heineman in 3-4 years. Not today's Emil Heineman. Today's Emil Heineman is.
I could see him
still be in the fight with those kids,
I don't think they would. for a lineup spot. Yeah, I don't think there would be. I mean, but again, I'm not going to fault the Canadiens for trading Emil Heineman to get Zach Bolduc. Like that's, and I don't fault the Canadiens for trading Arturi Lehkonen. But of course, they're not complete. You know that. We knew that before training camp even began. But like with the players that they have, they're still. To me, I'm going to be interested to see if at some point, because there's 2 lines Marty seems to not want to touch. When does he touch those lines if the other 2 lines don't work?
Yeah.
Because there are options. If you touch those 2 lines, there are combinations that you could find that could work. And I think if it were last year's context, he would go into the season and be like, no, I'm not touching the 2 lines that I love. But it's different now. And if you can't spend days and days talking about how important we need to get going before October 8th, and when the season starts, you can't just flip the switch and all this stuff. So that naturally suggests less patience.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to find out over those final preseason games just how much less patient he might be. Who knows? But I think it's going to be very interesting to see, because I think there's a lot of question marks remain. But to end it on a positive note, Kirby Dach, I think Kirby Dach played in the preseason much earlier than I thought he would. I did not expect him to play in the 3rd preseason game. I don't think Martin St. Louis expected him to play in the 3rd preseason game.
No, we had talked about we pictured him playing in Quebec City.
But Thursday morning, Martin sounded like pleasantly surprised that Kirby Dach was playing in that game. That's a positive, no matter what happened in the game, and the fact that I thought Kirby Dach looked fine, and I think that's a positive thing to take into the second week of training camp, or the preseason schedule at least, is that Kirby Dach played a game and looked, I would say, better than he did at the same point a year ago.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah,
that's a fair assessment. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up. Maybe
the Bell Center crew has passed center ice, so
yeah, there you go.
They've almost reached the other blue line, so they're almost done, but we're just about done.
If we keep talking, we'll see the beginning of that show.
Right.
So but quick word on the goalies. Maybe I'm happy with what I've seen of Jakub Dobeš so far. He's played only half a game, but I like his camp since the beginning. I think that he seems a lot more stable and compact in his net. There's a level of confidence. He doesn't seem like a guy who's about to have his job in jeopardy. He's firmly into that backup role. That's good to know. Obviously, it didn't go as well for Fowler on Thursday night than it did in his first outing. His glove was amazing. Against the Leafs, he struggled a bit more, just like the rest of the team. Montembeault, it doesn't matter if he got lit up, because it's preseason for him, and it doesn't really matter. And Kakkonen, we'll see. He had a tough.
Well, he made some good saves. He had some bad goals, and he made some good saves. Yeah,
he started
slow.
And finished strong.
The first shot he faced was a breakaway.
Yeah,
like his first shot in the Canadiens uniform was a breakaway. He stopped that, but then he gave up a soft one or two, but made some big saves in his appearance.
No, he gave up a goal on that breakaway.
Oh yeah, he did give up a goal on that breakaway. That's right. Yeah. So the first shot he faced was a goal on a breakaway. But I don't see any scenario in which Kaapo Kakkonen is the backup goalie on the Montreal Canadiens.
No,
he could light the world on fire. He could play all 3 preseason games and shut them out. And I still don't think he would be the backup goalie on the Montreal Canadiens. Not to start the season, at least.
But man, those 4 goalies, as from 1 to 4, they're in a good position. It has rapidly turned into a strength in this organization.
And they're remarkably cheap.
Yeah,
they're not spending any money, practically any money on this position.
No, that's well worth it.
I think I saw a list of like the goalie tandems in the league and how much. I think Montreal was 3rd to last or 4th to last in terms of the amount of money they're spending on the goaltending position. No, they're in a good spot there.
Yeah. All right, everybody, have a good weekend. There's more hockey, obviously, plenty of hockey to come, and we'll be back for our subscribers on Monday. And Have fun, everybody.
See you Monday. Bye-bye.
Basu Godin Notebook.